Hi, I'm Seth, and on this episode I'm going to be finishing up making all of these boxes. Okay, so there's quite a bit to do on these, but to start off, the very first thing I need to do is to separate the lids from the boxes. So I built these as one piece with the intention of cutting them off, so I'm here at the table saw to do exactly just that. So I've got my blade set to where I'm just slightly higher than the thickness of the sidewall. So I'm going to go one side at a time and cut these off. There's a couple things that I have to watch out for, mainly that when I make that last cut, I'm not pinching the blade. So I've got a way to tackle that, but let's get started. One of the things for me to consider when I'm doing this is that I've made my dovetails proud on this, which means when I lay this box on its side to cut the top off, the majority of the material is going to be raised up off of the surface of the table saw about a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch. Because the sides are going to be raised up, I am going to take a precaution against chip out, and I'm just going to put some blue tape all the way around this thing. That should hopefully help prevent any chip out. Okay, now that all the box tops are cut off, I can show you what I plan on doing with, I'm going to do the same thing on all these boxes, but the hinges I'm going to be using are these quadrant hinges. So the nice thing about them and what makes them great is that they will both act as the hinge and as the stop for the top. However, they are relatively difficult to install, but you can get around that if you just take your time. I'm using a couple jigs and I'll show you how they work. So the key with these hinges is that you not only have to make a hinge mortise along the back, but there also needs to be one along the sidewall of the box as well. And then on top of that, the stop that's built into it has to have a place to go. So you also have to drill in or mortise in for the stop to sit in its resting position. Now, there are other options here, obviously. You could use a regular set of butt hinges, you know, any small jewelry box kind of hinge, along with a stop of some sort. For instance, you could put a chain stop in it, would do the same thing. And there's even these arm stops that allow you to also support the lid of the box while it's open and keep it as one piece. Now, I accomplished this basically in 3 steps. In the first step, I used this template, which sits like this, but obviously on this side, which allows you to mortise in this slot right here. Then after that is mortised in, I come back with a second template to get the 90-degree portion of it to mortise out over here. And then finally I come back with my original template and a couple stop blocks, which then allow me to mortise in deeper for the stop that's on the hinge. Okay, now in order to build this, it basically boils down to taking some precise measurements and then building around it. The router I'm using on this has a 3/4 inch outside diameter collet on it, and I'm using a 1/4 inch bit. So I've got a 1/4 inch additional on either side of the bit, and that I have to account for. In order to get this right, you really have to be precise. And the way to do that is with a set of calipers. So I took my calipers and I measured the width of each section that I needed to mortise. And then I accounted for the extra 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch on either side of that to determine the width for my template. So in this case, I've got 0.28 inches plus 1/2 inch is 0.78 inches. Key is to know the difference between the collet on the router, the bit on the router, and then the size of the mortise that you actually need to cut, and you have to account for that difference. Something else to take into consideration when doing this is that it has to work for both the left-handed and right-handed side, and they need to match each other because this hinge here, the mating side of it on the lid, one of them's going to be a left-handed and one of them's going to be a right-handed, and they have to be exactly the same distance on the outside so that they, you know, sit nice and even and the lid closes easily. 3 of these boxes are going to receive a base on them with a couple legs. And because the bottoms of the boxes are made of solid wood, I do have to consider wood movement. Even though it's just a small box, it's still smart to consider wood movement. So I'm actually going to keep my attachment method pretty simple, and that is I'm going to use glue on about the center inch. That'll leave the whole outside of this base to be able to expand and contract. So doing that, we'll still firmly attach these to the base, but will allow for wood movement. And it was the simplest solution that I could think of. And so to clamp these, I'm using my workbench as an actual alignment to the front of the box. And then inside the box, I've got a couple of blocks of scrap wood, just to use as spacers so that I can get my clamps on without having to reach all the way to the bottom of the box. I'm just going to clamp these right over that glue. And then give them a little bit to cure. So here they are, all done. What I'm really liking about this project is that even though all of these boxes started from the same place and all started with the same idea of just practicing some dovetails, and then that turned into wanting to make some boxes, I made them all from basically the same design. However, each one of these is completely unique. There's something different on each and every one of them. So even though I've got 4 of them here that are cherry with walnut inlay, that inlay is different. I've got one with no inlay on the front just because I liked this big knot that was in there and liked how that turned out, but has inlay all the way around otherwise. And then the inlay pattern on the other 3 is different. 3 of them have a base on them. This one does not. And then I've got 3 walnut boxes, one of them with spalted maple for the front and top, and then the other 2 are walnut all the way around. However, this one over here is very, very heavy in sapwood, and I really like how that turned out. And then the walnut on this one has just a ton of figure to it. So I love all of them. I'm really happy with how they came out. I'm really happy with how unique each one of them is. And now I just have to figure out exactly what I'm going to do with them all. I hope you enjoyed watching this series, and I hope to see you again on the next one.